Yes,
That
Mr.
five, that 502 which I mentioned the other day, so about that.
I'm sorry.
Arbitration matter.
Arbitration
The committee
matter.
tenure has been extended by 1 more month. I think by middle of November,
So the arbitration matter, what we can do is we will keep on maybe sometime middle of November. Would you like to for us to take it? So presently we can just keep it because you are still, the process is still continuing. Then, Mr. Banerjee, we can keep arbitration. Who are the other lawyers appearing in the arbitration matter? So if we keep it, let the government is sorting it out, then nothing like it. Right.
The next thing at least
Certainly. You can just say that on the request of the Learned Attorney General for India, Star Venkatramani, Learned Attorney General for India, states that a consultative process is being carried out by the government on the proposed amendments to the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996. Full stop. Hence, it has been submitted that the reference to the Constitution bench may be taken up preferably by the middle of November, at which point of time there would be clarity on the law. Full stop. List on Kardor. And incidentally, I don't know if the arbitration, especially all of you are specialized lawyers, the curative petition in the on the issue as to whether the an unstamped agreement, registration stamping, that may be taken up. I'll just see how early we can list it, possibly next week or something. It of course has 5 judges, the curative, because we would like the assistance, irrespective of whether you are appearing in that matter or not. We would like the assistance of the bar. So in fact, can even those who would like to appear may contact the courtmaster. So he'll give you the date when it is coming. But we like the assistance because that's something which is really a matter of
NN Global.
And that NN Global.
That if you can't go to the committee.
No. Committee, as Brother Nasima said, because various other laws are involved, the Stamp Act, etc.
Right.
So we'll hear the review and then settle the law. I mean, if the judgment is right, of course it's right. If we feel that, there's some point for consideration, we may have to refer to 7 then. The earlier judgment was 7.
I'll look at it.
One housekeeping request in item 502, I have filed an intervening application. I am not able to access the records because they say till this application is allowed, you can't see the records which are there.
They don't put soft copy, they do. All right.
If my lord could grant,
they will give you a soft copy, don't worry.
The office of Attorney General is more open.
Yes.
I've shared a brief note on this matter.
Yes, you got the note. Supplemental media, right? So. Stop note. Yeah. Mr. Attorney, if you would like to take a seat for a minute, you can sit for a minute because you're just setting up your note on the screens. इसी बंदे क्या आज? इसी बंदे. Yes, Mr.
Your Lordship, straight away go to paragraph 5 of this note. Here I had more than one set of discussions with the officers. It transpires that the two notifications in question, which are referred to in the referral order. Yeah. So may I read paragraph 5 onward. The application of so-and-so enables the person holding a license for light motor vehicle to drive a transport vehicle on the strength of that license without a separate transport vehicle license. Humbly submitted, this interpretation does not appear to be in tune with the legislative intent. The purpose of the grant of a driving license may not be seen as confined only to the Motor Vehicles Act, but must extend to any other relevant aspect which would be in the advancement of public interest. That interpretation advanced aspect of the matter would be preferred. It's submitted that several provisions of the Motor Vehicles Act and the rules which have a bearing on the question of issuance of requisite license are not brought to the notice of the Honorable Court and so and so. And the result in view of the present law laid down in the said judgment, the provisions of the MB Act which are related to the subject of grant of driving license are kept out of reckoning. The key word throwing light on the need for specific and distinct driving licenses to be issued with reference to the specific class of vehicle occurring in Section 3 are effective driving license and the provisions of Section 6 which enjoin against multiple driving license same time. Subsection 3 of Section 6, however, permits the licensing authority to add to the class of vehicle which the driving license authorizes the holder to drive. This can, however, happen only after the due procedure on the MV Act regarding grant of driving license complied with. Consequently, Section 10 will have to be read as to advance the above object. The form referred to in subsection 1 of Section 10 must therefore necessarily include information relating to distinct categories of motor vehicles within the specific class of vehicles. It is therefore evident that every driving license must be with specific reference to a particular category of motor vehicle, and licenses may not be granted generally in respect of class of motor vehicle defined under the Act. Submitted that the intent legislature to categorize the light motor vehicles and transport vehicles into separate classes provided in Section 10(2) of the MV Act. It further provides for a distinct driving license for the class of vehicles that's in Section 3 of the MV Act. Therefore, the holder of a light motor vehicle license would not be entitled to drive a transport vehicle of any other category, and this principle would apply to all driving licenses. Therefore, it's reconsidered and suitably modified. So what I would probably suggest to the court is that since these notifications in question are issued simply in conformity with Article 141 principle, maybe if the notifications stand suitably amended, the rules can be amended, take care of all the situations which Devangan considers. But ultimately, the question whether one driving license is sufficient for driving all categories of vehicles would be a vexed question. You have to very carefully get into it. Somewhere this overlapping seemed to have been missed by the form as well as the Section 10. That's what seemed to have driven us into this problem. So I think Section 3, which talks about effective driving license, means maybe a driving license effective for the purpose of the particular category of vehicle in question.
Yes.
Whole range of illustrations given in Devangan talk about a maxi cab and a light motor vehicle, a car, or a three-wheeler and a similar vehicle. So they don't present any controversy. When we talk about a tractor or a road roller and a light motor vehicle, then there is a problem. Right? Ordinarily, a person who owns a tractor would like to own a tractor driving license, but he doesn't want a road roller driving license. And many of these categories of vehicles are driven in private space, for instance, mining areas, heavy transport vehicles. They are only in mining areas. Therefore, you could have very special driving license for those categories of vehicles.
Yes.
So the union, I think, is advised to withdraw this notification and issue a properly amended set of rules or guidelines, as the case may be.
The Attorney General would also kindly tell us, because broadly in the Motor Vehicles Act, there are the weight categories, right? When you talk about the light motor vehicles, up till a particular weight category, you are looking at certain kinds of vehicles and a holder of a LMB license can drive.
That's right.
Now, examples were given that, a lawyer or somebody with a medical professionals with his equipments, etc., would not be able to sort of drive with a light motor vehicle license if you go into the transport category. And the categorization of transport vehicles into heavy and medium category will also have its implications.
That's true.
So it can't be so, easily said that because you hold a light motor vehicle license, you would not be able to drive a vehicle which is otherwise also carrying goods.
But you're also right, but that will be a process of testing and then granting a license.
But your
So that
notification
process
has
must go
stood the test of time also. The central government, although you are saying that it's 141 that you have tried to implement, but over the years it has worked itself out. And look at the large number of people, drivers, who are driving commercial vehicles.
I certainly alive to that.
So you see, look at the livelihood issue.
That's true.
Look at the, absolving of responsibility. Because if you sort of, I think everybody is taking these aggregate driven cab, etc., riding. Perhaps most of the drivers are of holding LMB license.
I was given all that data. I looked into it, and it's a very, very important
That's a
dimension to be taken.
you have to
we can't
look
ignore
into
that.
the larger picture there.
Certainly.
But
I think, I suppose the rules would be so tuned so that we take care of that also, so that we're not looking backwards. So that is social.
No, certainly, but these implications, at least in the consideration, not necessarily of the insurance company, but for the country, I think these implications should have a consideration.
Absolutely.
So then, Mr. Attorney, how do we proceed further?
Since the question, the order talks about the two notifications, therefore the Union of India before your lordships.
Otherwise, your view is that
notification
Devangan missed critical portions of the statute which were not brought to the attention of the court.
Right.
And that you would therefore withdraw the notifications and perhaps issue fresh rules or regulations as the case may be.
That's right. Which will certainly address
you will have to ultimately you will have to amend the act if you have to.
No, that contemplation is also there.
You can't just do it by way of guidelines.
So, suppose section 3, 6, 10 all put together, we look at it and then say, yes, this is how the rules may serve the purpose. But if they cannot be done, well, the act may have to be amended. All that is also the contemplation.
The only way forward is if you feel that Devangan then is to be, either reiterated or overcome.
Legislative.
You have to do it legislatively.
No doubt about that. Because when my exchanges of
Existing
thoughts was that
position is interpreted by the court.
the government simply issued notification because the judgment has come.
So your point is that you issued the notification in compliance. It's not in acceptance, but you are bound to comply with the judgment and therefore you have complied with it.
But the interpretation given of the legislative intent, that still holds the field.
There could be some gray areas where I think.
As long as
that's right.
That remains.
Right, but there is some. But as far as the court's opinion that other endorsement may not be required, maybe slightly on overboard. That statement.
If the existing now Devangan has held the field for a while, right? That has interpreted the provisions of the law. Now, it's always open to the legislature to Parliament because Devangan is of 2017. It's held the field for 6 years.
That's right.
It is also always open to Parliament to take away the basis of the judgment.
That's open. I mean,
and particularly when the government has implemented it. And why should we withdraw or reconsider the judgment at this stage? And if you are thinking that the judgment is not in line with the statutory position, then if you are willing to amend it as and when you want and change the structure of law. For us to, why should we?
No, that you'll not know that process the thought was already set in motion.
So
But the question is today, what should happen to the notifications and all?
Have you said in your note that the government has set in motion the a change in the law or to review the entire position of law? Because, you know, this is really, this case doesn't raise a constitutional issue. It raises a pure statutory issue.
I understand that, but the question posed to the AG was only how do you look at the notifications, and then the notification to endorse the view taken in the judgment.
No, what we were wondering was that the government can, in the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways and even otherwise, can take a note of whether this interpretation, the consequence of that interpretation is correct or otherwise. If you feel that no, Devangan is wrong and therefore it has to be overruled, you can make suitable amendments to the law to put the matter beyond doubt.
Yeah, that's
A simple amendment to say that, well, if you have a license for this category LMB,
that course of action
you cannot have that license cannot apply with respect to a transport vehicle. A simple amendment will resolve it, but then
the advantage of a prospectivity also. Yeah, or is there another?
I know that course of action is certainly open to the government, but
that may then also not cause hardship to existing compensation claims which have been submitted.
on that I'm very clear. It should not
Because
any absent.
all those people who have made compensation
certainly,
claims
certainly.
on the basis of Devangan's
We are very clear on that. I don't think that issue should be reopened at all.
also the impact
that
on
is where it is
people, on the impact on people. I mean, there may be lakhs of drivers across the country who are today engaged in driving commercial vehicles on the basis of the judgment in Devangan. Now, they will be completely put out of their livelihood, you know. So,
therefore, the
and
government
therefore,
doesn't
this
want.
is not just, Mr. Attorney, this is not just a question of interpreting law. It's also a question of the social impact of the law. And you may have to balance a road safety on the one hand with the social purpose of the law. And to what extent would the interpretation in Devangan, that is a matter of policy for the government, to what extent would the interpretation in Devangan in that sense cause a serious, impact on the concerns of the government insofar as maintaining road safety, you're developing infrastructure across the country. Will this cause serious hardships in the, in the...
Even the law of insurance.
So, I mean, we can't decide issues of social policy in the constitution bench. We have to go strictly by law. But we are just wondering whether it would be really in that sense wise to decide the question of law on a judgment which has held the field now for 6 years. Parliament, the government and then Parliament can also review what is the actual impact of the implementation of this law. 6 years the law has been implemented.
Yes.
The insurance companies have one angle that, look, we should not be made to pay to take this liability at all. But the government can also take a call on what is the actual impact of the implementation of the law on the ground over the last 6 years. If the consequences are such that it does not pose any grave danger to road safety and protects, the right to livelihood, etc., or you may have some modifications in the future. Give some provision that, well, in the next 5 years or something like that, you must bring your licenses in conformity. You have like a sunset clause. So you may have a variety of options open to you, which we as a court don't have open to us.
True.
There's another.
You have to look at, the rapidly evolving transportation phase. You might have autonomous vehicles coming up. They're likely to come, or they're already being, experimented upon in other countries. India is not going to fall far behind, isn't it?
Unquestionable.
Today use our own private vehicle, tomorrow morning to just utilize it for transport. So that is permissible today by a person who owns a car without going in and then taking another license for transport, when you can put your, like in Rapido also. So in such situation where you have permitted usage, flip-flop both of them, in such cases also it becomes very necessary to have, to permit a license, general license, to be utilized for commercial without seamlessly. seamlessly.
Government may also have
I
to, government may also have to look at, this. How many licensees do you have in the country who are capable of meeting the strict dichotomy which the insurance companies have urged? Suppose we put them out. Of course, one impact is a social impact on these drivers. But more than that, how many will you be left with? Will you have that supply today in the country?
I quite see that it has to be, yeah.
And like the Chief Justice was, you are looking at people having valid license or not valid license. You are looking at a scenario in future where forget about a license, you don't have to have a person
Driver.
holding a license to drive the car.
That's
Driverless cars are coming,
That's true.
right? So you don't have to have a man. Forget about a man
No,
having a
well,
license.
one
Or a woman
take
having a
stock of
license.
all these development that may take place.
All
But I
these
was
aspects
also,
will come in.
yes, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Nothing.
Yeah, I was
These
also
aspects,
looking at.
and therefore this is really a matter. We feel that it's for the government to really look at it holistically. You see, because you of course have the interests of the insurance companies. You have the interests of road safety, but you also have to balance the interests of people who may be shut out of their work, that livelihood. Then the increase in the demand with the rapidly evolving transport sector. So
The strength of the legislature to deliberate upon this issue.
Which is
you
not
must
available to
utilize.
us.
You must
which is not
utilize it.
available to
No,
us.
no, I understand that. That's why my first meeting was, I asked several questions which I didn't have ready answers. I mean, therefore we had to engage more in great depth about all these aspects. of the
Yesterday, in
matter.
fact, many of the lawyers are not here. Of course, solicitor was here. Yesterday, when we referred the 124A sedition issue to Constitution Bench, we were also impressed, of course, by both your submissions that, look, legislature is deliberating. As you recall in our conversation yesterday, we felt that, look, you have to deal with the constitutional issue because the prosecutions under the existing law will have to be dealt with. That's why but this is a pure statutory issue. See, and this statutory issue combined with intense issues of social policy, social implications, and government may, for instance, settle for a less than legal solution only to protect people whose livelihoods are involved. You see, government does that all the time. You don't go by strict legality because, you also of the view that, okay, people are dependent on these.
So all that I'm trying
Our
to.
lay down, the easiest thing for us to, in that sense, is to interpret the law and then come to the conclusion possibly that Devangan was wrongly decided because you didn't look at certain provision. But it's not that simple,
that's
the
not.
impact of it would be so, we are worried about the impact of that finding, on the sector, the economy.
I didn't intend to go beyond this very
So
minimal
how should we,
statement made
how should we
today.
go about it? Would you like to just maybe have a chat with the solicitor and both of you, if you feel that government should, we'll hear you in a minute, that government would review the entirety of the position and then take an appropriate call and inform the court. If you still feel, that, look, Devangan is wrong, we have assessed the whole impact on the social sector.
I don't think
The
I can
road
make that
safety.
statement.
No, we'll not push you right now, not at all. It would not be fair because this is something which will have to be done at a policy level in the government. And if you still tell us that, no, look, decide the question of law because we have reviewed it and according to us, the impact of a wrong position in law will far outweigh the dangers of setting the law straight. And we will go by the present position of law. Then, of course, we'll then hear you also on the merits of the legal position and we'll hear all the people who are on the other side. But if you tell us that, look, we'll look at everything dispassionately and then evaluate where should we.
Even thereafter this question.
Because the insurance companies also state and
Prospectively
many of
looking
them
at
are
the
state-run
judgment and
insurance
whatever,
companies.
that question may still arise.
Before the learned attorney had a meeting with the officials, I also had a meeting with the officials. And at the official level, my lord, they also agree that it needs a relook.
A relook.
They are also, my lord, responsible and they say that needs a relook. But as Lord, a little more deliberation before assuring your lordships or before making any commitment, my lord, would be needed.
One way which we can do is that we can just presently, suppose if we rise for about 15 minutes to a half an hour, maybe you can talk to the secretary and the minister. And if you can give us a small statement, we can take it on the record which does not bind you, because when you say you're having a relook, it doesn't mean you're changing the law. You may have a relook and say, no, we go by the present law, we don't want to change it. So various options are open to you, you know, and those options are absolutely not open to us as a court. So, the other way of doing it is that we keep it for tomorrow. They can tell us.
But we can try and
You come back and tell us tomorrow.
And that's,
the difficulty would be, my lord, just practical difficulty. The secretary, my lord, will be able to talk to in all probability. But cabinet is going on, my lord, and cabinet generally is a very deliberative process.
Long,
It takes
long.
3 to 4 hours, my lord. Everyone participates. So minister may not be approachable right now. But we can respond, my lord, by tomorrow.
Or we can say, we can pass a short order right now, saying that, you know, we had requested the Attorney General to assist us on this. The Attorney General has said that these, given us a note which says that the notifications were not an acceptance by the government, but in implementation of the government, because you're bound under Article 141, that at the same time, you know, we have requested the government to take a holistic view of the matter. And because apart from the fact that, you know, the interpretation of law is involved, there may be various other issues of the social impact if the position of the position as it obtains in Mukund Devangan is reversed and is disturbed after having held the field for 6 years. And there are various considerations which obviously are of a policy nature which have to be looked into by the government. Namely, one, the interest of having people who are duly qualified in the interest of road safety and the public interest of other users of roads and highways.
Very true.
Two, at the same time, you know, looking at the evolving nature of the transport sector, what would be in the best interest of the nation going forward. And three, balancing the social impact of any change in the position of law which has been laid down in Devangan. And therefore, we would very much appreciate if the government reflects on all these issues, which are of a policy nature, which fall within the domain of the government and not really the court, and apprise us of what way forward the government would intend to do. That might, so we will not take a call right now, but we'll just flag these issues so that you can go to the government and to the cabinet with our short order, which
Yes.
might.
I think that would be in order. That would be in order.
If we are silent completely, government and the cabinet may say that what is it that is weighing with the Supreme Court? What are we to do actually right now? So we will not say whether Devangan is right or wrong. We'll not give our mind on that at all, because that's a small thing. The legality is a small thing. We are worried about the.
I mean, that's how I looked at it primarily, that because quite a few issues which were not present in the mind of the government when they issued the notification.
Right. And now Learned Solicitor also says that perhaps at the official level there is some feeling
Yes,
that.
they also, my lord, say that it needs a.
And the sector is evolving so much.
Because
Now having, you know, you have these crisscross highways across the country now. I mean, we need to look at it, perhaps the position as it obtained when the law was enacted is radically different now.
Yes. And there was a committee also, my lord, we went through the committee's report, but nothing much, my lord, turned out which can assist your lordship. It will have to be a holistic, fresh law. You were told by the officers that it needs a relook. Time. Our freedom of speech is curtailed. During the meeting with the learned attorney also, the officers shared the same thing, that it needs a redo. So that at official level, there is no dispute or difficulty.
Right.
It
It might be
requires
also-
to be a holistic relook.
Also, it's much better that, these issues are settled for the country at a policy level by the government, rather than us looking at it as a pure issue of interpretation. Because if it were, I mean, that's the easiest thing in the world for us. We have heard the other side, we're almost at the end of the arguments, but
That's right.
we're just worried about, other issues and perhaps in the interest of the sector as a whole, that there has to be some, considered regulatory response. So, emergency, we can always wait for another 3 or 4 months and.
Yes.
So, Mr. Devrath, all of you on this side,
Lordship
Anita,
has been-
you feel that, Mr.
Lordship
Noy?
has pointed certain issues. One more issue, my lord, I just want to add. The safeguards are provided in different state rules and acts. This following Mukund Devangan and the provisions of the act. And they
We only-
actually take
we
care
only
of.
Say that there will be state rules, etc. I
Yes,
mean, it's
yes,
not
state
like,
rules.
you have a uniform
Yes.
structure of.
We have put on record the Karnataka and Kerala also, which puts all these drivers at par at
That's
the.
on merits.
Milord,
Fair enough. That let the government.
That's-
Mr. Bhushan, Mr. Kaul, all of you, would you like, should we follow this course of action? That
Can
we-
I just take 5 minutes of your lordship's time very quickly? The lordship has raised some important issues about livelihood and what is going to be the impact on people who are insured and now face this issue that the person didn't have a driving license, etc. Now, let me just address them very, very quickly. Insofar as the livelihood issue of drivers is concerned, that should not be much of a problem because all they need to do is go and get an endorsement, take a driving test for a transport vehicle and go and get an endorsement that you are permitted to drive a transport vehicle, or else take an additional license of a transport vehicle. That should take no time, particularly if they have been driving. So therefore, my lord, that test will not take very much time. It's only people who will fail the test who have a problem, and then they should not be on the road in any case. The other issue that your lordship mentioned was about the insured. What happens to them? Now, your lordship has, my lord, all the powers under 142. Your lordship can say, I mean, that's one of the things that your lordship can possibly say, that any accidents which have happened between Mukul Devangan and now, or till your lordship decides, those will continue to be governed by the Mukul Devangan regime. Namely, that those will not be considered a ground for invalidation of the insurance policy, because they were driving cars on the basis of the binding judgment of the Supreme Court. But, my lord, the matter has been referred by 3 judges to 5, and it is an issue of law. It is an issue of interpretation of a parliamentary enactment. The government, whether it agrees or does not agree, my lord, cannot change a parliamentary enactment. That's the executive government. Ultimately, this call has to be taken by parliament. But as it stands today, once the reference has been made to your lordship, then, my lord, it is my humble submission that your lordship must answer that, my lord, reference. Your lordship may say that we agree with Mukund Devangan, or your lordship may say, no, Mukund Devangan was wrong. It did not consider various aspects of it, and at the same time protect, my lord. So therefore, my lord, to ask the government will not be able to tell your lordship that they want to amend the act or whatever it is. Ultimately, that's a call that parliament has to take. And therefore, my lord, your lordship will have to interpret the law that is presently there before your lordship, my lord, in terms of the Motor Vehicles Act with the amendments. And, my lord, it is far more dangerous. The legislature took a clear, according to me, my lord, if I'm right, in the interpretation of the act, the legislature took a clear distinction between transport vehicles and light motor vehicles and laid a completely different regime. Your lordship recalls, my lord, that second part of section 3(1), which says that no person shall drive a transport vehicle without specifically being authorized to do so. So therefore, in my humble submission, my lord, it is far more dangerous to let people who do not have that endorsement of permission to drive a transport vehicle or do not have, my lord, a license to drive a transport vehicle, because the longer this continues, the more, my lord, drivers who are not properly equipped to drive a transport vehicle will be on the road. The earlier your lordship decides this issue, of whether they are actually equipped or not, the better it is. Ultimately, I follow Lord, your Lordship is concerned about people who are insured who may be left without insurance, but that is at the stage when there was confusion because of Mukund Devangan. That your Lordship can take care of under 142. But your Lordship should not, my Lord, let this issue linger. If the position of law is absolutely clear, it is of course open to Parliament to later on amend it if they feel that it is wise to amend it. But for the moment, whatever the Act says, and it is my humble submission that the Act has always said the same thing. Namely, my Lord, Section 3(1), that second part has always been there. Section 10 amendment whereby transport vehicle has come as a separate class of vehicle for which a license can be granted came in 1994. But even prior to that, that second part of Section 3(1) was always there. Therefore, my Lord, in my humble submission, Mukul Devangan is an aberration. It's a departure from, my Lord, what the Act says. And therefore, it needs to be corrected at the earliest because it is resulting in people who are not equipped to drive a transport vehicle being permitted to drive a transport vehicle.
Only one interjection, apropos, my lord, what my learned, it fell from him, my lord. I'm not objecting to that, just to appraise your lordships, my lord. If your lordships takes the referral order dated 8th March 22. Lord,
Just 1 second.
your lordships may perhaps not be required to rely upon 142. That is taken care of, my lord, subject to my understanding being corrected. Para 7 of that order, my lord, last but one para.
The referral order is at page 110, my lord.
110.
All compensations have been paid. Records.
Your lordship gets that, no?
Of my written submissions, my lord. Page 110 of my written submission.
110, my lord, of Mr. Dave's written submission. Para 7. This is the order under which, my lord, the reference is made to your lordships. Before we part, we must note that all the learned counsel appearing for the insurance companies have fairly submitted that the compensation in terms of the directions issued by the courts below, that is to say, in following the principle laid down in Mukul Devangan, has either been paid in full or shall be paid in terms of such directions. Their statements are recorded. This can continue.
My lords, may I just add one thing? My lords, right through our argument, your lordships had been that Parliament was very clear on the law that it enacted in terms of the difference between a light motor vehicle and a transport vehicle. Barely because a general definition in section 2 talked about below a certain weight did not alter either the eligibility or the endorsement required on the license, and the Act is completely usage-based. There are provisions after provisions. Devangan wrongly interpreted the law. It's not a case of removing the basis of Devangan because there is nothing in the Act which justified the interpretation. This is what I say in all humility. A validation act or a change in law would be required if it was to remove the basis of a judgment. Here, the interpretation of the Act itself is patently on the face of a draw.
You're absolutely right. There's sometimes when a new law is required to take away the basis of the judgment. Assuming, of course, we know your point that Devangan is basically wrongly decided, therefore it has to be set at right on interpretation. But we are also of the view that the government must now consider whether the position in Devangan should continue whether it should be modified in part, whether, there is some change in the law required, bearing in mind the sectoral changes which have taken place, the impact of the judgment being reversed broadly on the social sector.
Sectorial changes that have
Therefore,
occurred.
That no one can, if your lordship
That's right.
feels so, that's the larger issue.
so
But
we are
all
not
that we are-
closing the reference.
All that we are
First of
adding,
all, we will not close the reference
Yes.
saying that, look, we are not saying that, look, Devangan is, that Devangan is rightly decided. We don't want to do that.
Bow down.
Because then you would be doing disservice to the reference order.
May I with respect say, our concern was what? As far as the
Government
compensation
will
is
tell us that, no, you decide whether Devangan is right or wrong. We don't want to bring any change.
The compensation was concerned, the learned solicitor general has shown para 7. My lords, as far as livelihood is concerned, our respectful submission right through has been, all it requires is meeting the eligibility test, and in the meantime, a window can always be given by the court. But the impact of permitting a person who is ineligible and ill-equipped to drive a transport vehicle is far more. It's not a simple.
But I'll tell you one thing, see, that is to be seen.
That
See,
is to be
Mr.
seen,
Both
that's
Mr.
exactly.
Jan Bhushan also, and you are saying that all that it requires is an endorsement. Now, the point of the matter is that the government may still come to us, for instance, I'll give you an example. The government may come to us and say that, look, you are right, the insurance companies are right. We must make sure that all existing licenses fall in line with the rigor of the statute and the rules. But at the same time, the government can still bring about a suitable amendment by saying that, look, existing licenses will be protected for a period of 3 years. We can't do that. I mean, for us to do that under 142 would be a little far-fetched after we lay down the law. Government can still say that, look, we want these to be in conformity, but we'll give a little time for bringing about this end. That's what we should do.
My lord,
The license will remain valid for LMV. The only question will be, the statute as we read it says that it's valid for LMV and endorsement for transport. It is the Devangan interpretation
Right.
which does away with the distinction between a light motor vehicle purely for non-transport use and commercial use. That's where the rub lies. So it's not as if someone loses the license. What your lordships are saying is an issue where post the judgment, people may have acquired a license, started commercial activities. For those, what we are saying, windows can be created.
Or
But
even
sure.
see the judgment.
Lords,
The
may I
judgment,
just
the
supplement?
statute was clear. The parliament was clear, including the learned attorneys' written submissions now before your lordships. The
So,
intention
we'll
of
have to-
parliament has always been.
Suppose, therefore, we accept your argument and say Devangan was wrongly decided. We'll have to first use our 142 power to say that existing claims for compensation will be governed by the law as it was enacted, law as it was interpreted in Devangan. Two, we will have to say that, look, those licenses which are no longer valid as a consequence of the reversal of Devangan, they can yet, we will treat them by deeming direction of the court that they will be still treated as valid licenses for a certain stipulated period, say 6 months, 1 year, to for people to acquire endorsements. You're not dealing with, one big industry or, one source that you can exercise the 142 power. You're dealing with lakhs and lakhs of people, who have licenses.
And
Let the
Devangan.
government decide what to do in such
My lord,
situation.
Devangan actually inured to some amount of social benefit. Then the negativity of Devangan, how it negatively impacted is also a matter of deliberation, which the government will look into it, how it has worked over a period of time.
my
And
lord,
they
we
will
are
have to
yet
look
to
into it.
argue on merits, my lord. If my lord is making any observation on merits, we are yet
Should
to
we
argue.
make any observations merit? We not do
Secondly,
anything
my lord,
like that.
secondly, even if it,
We have
my lord
to
is.
still consider a response from your side on merits. That
Yes.
we will not do. We are just looking at the broader.
And even if my lord is referring it to government, my lord may put adequate safeguards, because any such reference or any observation regarding Devangan, before High Court and tribunals, it is read that it will be reconsidered, it will be changed, and entire litigation comes to standstill across country. My lord may put in adequate.
Lords, may I just make two short submissions, my lords?
We are not carrying on merits on the correctness
Yes.
of Devangan. We are not taking the matter beyond the referral order of 8th of March 22. We are not going back on the referral order of 8th of March 22, and we are holding, we will hold the position as it is on the basis of the referral order.
My lords, may I just make one or two short submissions, my lords? There is a slight difference from what has been suggested to your lordships or argued, my lords. Devangan has been referred to your lordships on the ground that it is per incurium, actually. Not that it wrongly decides, because it does not consider.
Right.
It does not consider certain provisions of the Motor Vehicles Act while it gave that interpretation. So it's not an interpretation per se, which is before your lordships, my lord, that these sections which were not considered by Divangan, therefore makes it per incurium, which is your lordships will find at page 114, the paragraph before the court, my lords. Thereafter, certain provisions were not brought to the notice of the court deciding Mukund Devangan. Those provisions as quoted in the reference order are under, and therefore it comes, my lords. So therefore, it makes the judgment per incurium according to us, my lords, and therefore, once these provisions are taken into account, it will obviously, my lords, on a question of interpretation would be entirely different because they were not considered in that judgment.
That's the only point I am making. Save Life Foundation, my lords, is the only judgment of this court, my lords, till now, where, my lords, road safety is considered as a part 321 right. And, my lords, if your lordship would slightly look at the present attorney's note also, it talks about public interest, my lords, in paragraph 6. Therefore, my lords, keeping in view public interest in paragraph 6 that has already been spread out by the government, as well as, my lords, this judgment, my lords, namely Save Life Foundation, where it clearly says in paragraph, my lords, 57, page 208, that the integral part of our constitutional scheme under 21 is road safety. There is no other judgment, my lords, which comes quite close to this as far as road safety is concerned. And pursuant to this judgment, my lords, 134A was included. So, my lords, therefore, pursuant to this judgment, 134A, wherein, my lords, witnesses protection program has been included. Therefore, based on that, my lords, they can always come in with a new change of law. But the point is, my lords, both this judgment as well as paragraph 6 note, which my learned attorney has given, may be taken into consideration. The lordship may say that it has been made part of the 21 right. Therefore, the law could be brought in terms of that. The lordship may kindly see, my lords, 2016 7 SCC 194.
May not be out.
2016.
Applications. That's right. If you have to assist the court on ethic and on. A reference before the Constitution bench arises in pursuance of an order dated 8 March 2022 of a bench of 3 judges. Full stop. The bench of 3 judges, the 3-judge bench, was in turn hearing a reference by 2 judges on 3 May 2018. Full stop. The primary issue, which has been referred to the Constitution bench, is whether a person holding a driving license in respect of a light motor vehicle would, on the strength of the license, be entitled to drive a transport vehicle of the light motor vehicle class having an unladen weight not exceeding 7,500 kgs. Full stop. The issue was dealt with by the bench of 3 judges in Mukund Devangan versus Oriental Insurance Company Limited, 2017, 14 SEC 663. Full stop. The conclusions which were arrived at in Mukund in the judgment were in the following terms: colon, ये दवे साहब के written submission para 60 copy कर लीजिए of the judgment, 60, 60.1 up to 60.4. Reference order में पूरा है. Reference order में ही पूरा है. Full stop. When the reference before the 3-judge bench was taken up, a counsel appearing on behalf of the insurance companies submitted that the judgment in Mukund Devangan has not noticed certain specific provisions of the Motor Vehicles Act 1988. Full stop. In particular, it was submitted, as it has been urged before the Constitution Bench, that Section 3 of the Act stipulates that, into inverted commas, no person shall so drive a transport vehicle other than the motor cab or motorcycle hired for his own use or rented under any scheme made under subsection 2 of section 75, unless his driving license specifically entitles him so to do. Full stop. Apart from this, the referral order notes that the two-judge bench was also of the view that other provisions, including section 4(1), section 7, and section 14 of the Act, and Rule 5 and Rule 31 of the Central Rules for Motor Vehicles 1989 were not noticed in Mukund Devangan. Full stop. Next. The Union of India was not a party to the proceedings before this court when the referral order was passed on 8 March 2022. Full stop. On 20 July 2023, when the Constitution Bench, on 20 July 2023, the Constitution Bench heard arguments on behalf of the insurance companies as well as on behalf of the claimants. Let's stop. At that stage, this court observed as follows: copy down para 3 and 4 of the order. Let's stop. We were of the considered view at that stage that it would be appropriate to request the Learned Attorney General for India to render assistance to the court, since the interpretation of a central enactment was an issue. Let's stop. Moreover, as already noted earlier, as noted above in the extract cited earlier, the notifications dated 16 April 2018 and 31 March 2021 in the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways were pressed in aid on behalf of the Council for the Claimants to urge that the Union government had in fact amended the rules to bring them in conformity with the judgment in Mukund Devangan. Next. Mr. R. Venkatramani, Learned Attorney General for India, has appeared in the course of has appeared in response to the request of the court and submitted a written note, full stop. The note submitted by the Attorney General indicates that bracket 1, application of the ratio in Mukund Devangan enables a person holding a license for a light motor vehicle to drive a transport vehicle on the strength of that license without a separate transport vehicle license. Semicolon, bracket 2, this interpretation of the law, of the provisions of the statute and the rules in Mukund Devangan does not appear to be in tune with the legislative intent. Full stop. The note also indicates that the notification dated 16 April 2018 was issued by the Union government, taking note of the judgment in Mukund Devangan as the law declared by this court. Full stop. Resultantly, the notification dated 31 March 2021 was issued to further amend the rules to bring them in conformity with the judgment. Full stop. However, the stand of the Union government, however, the Attorney General has also submitted that this may not be treated as a policy declaration by the Union government, and as such, the two notifications may not have any bearing or conclusiveness on the state of the law to be clarified. But stop. At the same time, it has been submitted that the Union of India is open to the need, if any, to issue guidelines, regulations to address the perceived gaps in the law as understood in the judgment of this court in Mukund Devangan. Full stop. Apart from the specific submission of the Union government during the course of the hearing, that it is open to the need to reevaluate, the position in law, we have the considered view that it would be necessary for the court at this stage to have a fresh look at the matter by the Union government, particularly in the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. Full stop. We say so for the, we are inclined to take this view for the following reasons, Firstly, there has been, since the enactment of the Motor Vehicles Act in 1988, there has been a rapid evaluation of the transport sector, particularly in the last few years, with the emergence of new infrastructure and new arrangements, particularly in the commercial sector, for putting into place transport arrangements, private transport arrangements. Secondly, the issue as to whether, any interpretation of the law must duly take into account, any interpretation or formulation of the law must duly take into account valid concerns of road safety, bearing upon the safety of other users of public transport facilities. Thirdly, the decision in Mukund Devangan has held the field for nearly 6 years, and the impact of the reversal of the decision at this stage, particularly on the social sector, was a facet which should merit consideration which would have to be placed in the balance by the policy arm of the government. Fourthly, any change in the position of law as expressed in Mukund Devangan would undoubtedly have an impact on persons who have obtained insurance, relying on the law declared by this court. Full stop. And who may be driving commercial vehicles with LMB licenses. Full stop. Many of these, a large number of persons would be dependent on the sector for earning their livelihoods. Full stop. All the above considerations which we have flagged above, the considerations which have been flagged by the court above do not necessarily weigh in the same direction. Full stop. All of them do raise important issues of policy, which in the primary instance must be assessed and evaluated by the union government. Full stop. Whether a change in the law would be warranted is again a matter which has to be determined by the union government after taking into account a considered decision, bearing in mind diverse considerations which fall within the remit of the government in making policy choices and decisions. Full stop. Having regard to the above, having regard to these features, we are of the view that the issue of interpretation which has been referred to the Constitution bench by the referral order dated 8 March 2022 should await a careful evaluation of the policy considerations which must weigh with the government in deciding as to whether a reversal of the position as it obtains in Mukund Devangan is warranted, and if so, the way forward that must be adopted in the interest of bearing in mind diverging interests, some of which have been noted in the earlier part of this judgment. We are hence of the view that in view of the far-reaching implications which may arise by the reversal of the decision in Mukund Devangan, it would be appropriate if the entire matter is evaluated by the government before the court embarks on the interpretative exercise. Full stop. Once the court is apprised of the considered view of the union government, the proceeding before the Constitution bench and then will be taken up.
Your Lordship may fix
Based
some
on
time limit.
the view, which is based on the further material which is made available to the court. Full stop. We request the union government to carry out the exercise within a period of 2 months and to apprise this court accordingly on the next date of listing. Full stop. We clarify that we have not expressed any opinion on the merits of the referral order dated 8 March 2022 or on the correctness of the decision in Mukund Devangan, full stop, which would await further arguments once the considered view of the union government is placed before this court.
No, I'll declare would continue because he's taking the high court.
State government. One submission of the Lordship.
It's done, Kaduk. When should we place it, brothers? We place it sometime in. We can tentatively place it, I think, on the 22nd of November. Should have kept it 8th or 22nd. 22nd will give you clear 2 months. And then you can tell us if the government feels that.
Might need consultation with state governments also.
Yeah.
And also, Milord, the insurance companies be permitted, Milord. The insurance companies be also permitted to participate and give their, this thing. So it's very important.
For directions, actually, we can take
Direction.
directions on, so that, then we don't have to, otherwise the benches have to reassemble. We can place it for directions on the 21st. On the 22nd. That's much better, so that, then we know whether we have to proceed with the matter or what we have to do.
Just one correction in your
Yeah.
purchase order. It says 16/4/2018 notification. That was only a letter. The next
Letter.
one, which is 31/3/21 was a notification.
All right.
That is a
16/4
ministerial
letter.
directive, just a letter from the
Okay.
ministry. I thought just for purposes of.
Plus, the insurance companies be also be allowed permitted to participate and give their inputs to them.
Yeah, of course, they are bound to do it. It will be a consultative
The
exercise.
stakeholder.
They're also.
As stakeholders, of course, the government will have to listen to you. And there's no doubt about it. They'll have to look at the state governments also. They'll have to perhaps look at the state rules as well.
Yes, yes, yes.
We can see, then if we.
Your Lordship could just mention that, not that we are also permitted to not
Oh, of course,
participate.
yeah. Why do you require the support of the court, you
Our
are.
conduct has been overboard, my lord. In the 8th March order also, we have said we'll keep paying, we will not
Attorney
contest.
General, I'm sure.
There has to be
Mr.
some.
Attorney General, I'm sure the government will do a consultative exercise. They are also vital stakeholders.
Of course.
Since Union of India was not participating in the earlier process, they have invited the Union of India. So they will, I suppose, reciprocate the compliments towards you people.
We are so grateful, my lord.
Very great.
Great.
Some lot depends on what the water.
It's not the Americans who won the war for the Allies. It was the Soviet Union who came and destroyed Hitler. Like an American general said, they will fight the Ukrainian war till the last Ukrainian.
Yes, right.
Prime Minister Modi understands what matters to a country is economic power. Nehru destroyed the Indian economy and impoverished us.
The following is a conversation with Mr. Mohandas Pai. Mr. Pai is a former CFO and board member with Infosys, and he's also the co-founder of Akshay Patra. He's also a Padma Shri awardee. Please subscribe and enjoy the podcast. Mr. Mohandas Pai, welcome to the Abhijit Chawla podcast. Thank you so much for hosting me in your wonderful office.
Thank you,
so
Abhijit. Good to talk to you.
Absolutely, sir. So I would like to talk to you about a variety of topics, mainly geopolitics, economics, and other matters as well. So let's begin with what's happening in the major focus of the world, which is the war in Ukraine. What is your assessment of how things have progressed? It's been more than 1 year now. Who do you see is winning? Who do you see is losing? Is Putin losing the war? Is the West winning the war? Or is there something else that's...
See, my view is this is a part of the Cold War, which is supposedly ended a long time ago, but which the military-industrial complex in the United States is unable to accept. Russia, that lump country after the Soviet Union was dissolved, was trying to grow and come back. Yeltsin destroyed it and created a vacuum.
Yes.
There's a famous debate in the Oxford Student Union by a Russian comedian who was asked, why is there no democracy in Russia?
Okay.
And he said, you must remember that the serfs were there till 1917 in Russia. It was a feudal country which never had a history of democracy. And then came Stalin, then came Lenin and Stalin and the Communist Party, which took over Russia and created the Soviet Union. And they were oppressive, they were totalitarian, and they shut out dissent. But what they did, they made sure that everybody had access to education, they got jobs, they didn't get much income, but they were comfortable. So there was certainty in society.
Yes.
And society decayed because much of the resources went to bolster up the Warsaw Pact against the West. The starting point for the Soviet Union was very low. Please remember that. And the Second World War essentially was won for the West because of the Soviet Union.
Absolutely.
The Soviet Union's lost 20 million men.
Yes.
It's not the Americans who won the war for their
No, it's
lives.
not. Yeah.
It was the Soviet Union who came and destroyed Hitler.
Yes.
Hitler's biggest mistake was Operation Barbarossa when he went against the Soviet Union, overtaken by hubris that he wants to get land for his people,
Yes.
which was a big mistake.
Yes.
Because that kind of territory cannot be controlled by anybody. And Napoleon's Grand Army was destroyed by that adventure
Yes.
many years before that. Now, over a period of time, the West has not been able to understand what Putin wanted. The Slavs are a very proud people.
Yes.
The Russians are very proud people. They love their country, call it Mother Russia. They stand up for the country. They're very different from the West.
Yes.
And there is no culture of democracy. They want certainty, they want peace and tranquility, which Putin has provided to them and which Yeltsin had destroyed.
Yes.
And we must read history. Now, Putin is a major superpower because he has enough nuclear arms to destroy the world 4 times over.
Yes.
The economy may not be big, but he's got nuclear arms.
He has more nukes than the US.
Yes.
Yes.
And he can use them
Yes.
irrationally if he wants to. So the West should have asked Putin to come into NATO and join together.
He wanted to join.
Yes.
Yes.
And they refused
Yes.
because they didn't understand that they did not want it, because that would have, guaranteed the safety and security of Europe. Because there are only 2 powers we can fight each other, United States and Russia.
Yes.
And Russia joins NATO, which is to protect this. And NATO would have become an Asian power.
Indeed.
Because NATO would have had suzerainty right up to Vladivostok across Siberia.
Yes.
And if NATO had done that, they could have taken on China today.
Indeed. Yes.
So please remember, the West forgot a very big strategic need that they had.
Yes.
Because of course, at that point of time, China was nowhere in the reckoning, seen as a poor country, nobody could see forward, etc. Now, the Ukraine matter happened primarily because of the change in the leadership and the elections, the problem with Crimea, which Russia took over. And we must remember that after the war, Russia gifted Crimea to Ukraine.
Yes.
And long ago, there was a battle called the Crimean War. The Crimean
yes.
War between
19th
Great
century.
Britain and Russia
Yes.
was the last cavalry-driven war. After that came the industrial wars.
Yes.
So it has its own history.
Yes.
And Russia held on and to the Crimea despite invasion by others. So the memory of that is very big, and they're not going to gift it away. Now, Ukraine applying for NATO would mean that nuclear arms would come closer to the Russian border. And Ukraine is next to Russia.
Yes.
Now, as it is, many countries of the erstwhile Soviet Union joined NATO. And there was a report which said that at one point of time, there's a commitment from the United States by, President, senior Bush's, Secretary of State to say to Gorbachev that they will not have this new country join NATO, and there'll be buffer states for Russia's security.
Yes.
And Russia is very security conscious because it's been invaded by European powers so often.
Yes.
The Napoleonic invasion and Hitler's invasion are fresh in their minds.
Yes.
So I think it's important for the West. The West will not understand. They're black and white. So I think when Putin asked Ukraine not to go there and asked the West for commitment, they did not do it. They waited for him. Now they want to bleed Russia.
Yes.
Just like Russia bled in Afghanistan. And later when the Americans came there and they bled there with the Taliban, and Russia supported with arms and ammunition. So it's a great power game that is being played out. We don't know what will happen. But today, if you look at it, Russia is bleeding. It's got sanctions. So it's hurting it very well. It's a matter of time before it hurts more. The Americans are also hurting, primarily because they're funding the Ukraine conflict.
Yes.
Like an American general said, they will fight the Ukrainian war till the last Ukrainian.
Yes, right.
And the Europeans are hurting because now they have to increase the spending on defense to 2% of GDP. They have a huge social security commitment. The economy is not growing, economy is aging.
Yes.
So reality has come. They have to pay more for energy. They were getting deeply subsidized gas from Russia.
Yes.
That's gone.
Yes.
And the chemical industry is gone. Much of the industry is gone and become less competitive. I mean, Germany, which is the biggest state there in economic terms, is going into recession.
It is.
Where German manufacturing is there.
Yes.
UK is in deep trouble economically. France is in trouble. But the future of Europe is something that is clouded economically and socially, because their median age is about 47 years. The biggest challenge, I believe, for the planet is in my view, aging. And we should discuss that.
Right.
So I think all this end result will be, this will be a war of attrition. I don't know when it's going to end. Hopefully reason will come to President Biden and Putin to sit across the table and come to a settlement. Xi has become the supplier of goods and many things to Putin. And Xi has become stronger globally. He's facing sanctions on semiconductor area.
Yes.
But he has got 31% of global manufacturing. And even if you shift, it's going to take a long time. And the shifting is essentially happening in Vietnam, which shares 1,200 kilometers with China.
Yes.
There are the Chinese entrepreneurs going across the border in Vietnam and doing it. So I think this is a big issue that is going to impact the world. And we don't know when they will settle. But the world geopolitical orders will change. China imports 85% of its oil from the Persian Gulf.
Yes.
And it passes to the Indo-Pacific.
Yes.
And that's why India becomes important. India is getting wooed by the West.
Yes.
India is a growing economic power. So the West requires us to be on their side. Least of all, not to be on anybody else's side. So you've got to be on their side. Even if we try to be independent and try to say that we're not going to fight anybody's army, etc. And for India too, China is a big enemy.
It is.
And the Chinese are very clear that they want to make sure that India does not come up. That's the whole intention, because they want to be the big hegemon in Asia.
Yes.
Southeast Asia is formerly, large part of it is called Indochina. It will now be called Indochina. China has hollowed out the economies of Southeast Asia by importing a lot from them and using it to export outside. So they depend on China for a lot of their trade. Japan population is aging and shrinking. Last year, 1.6 million Japanese side, 800,000 Japanese were born, children were born. So the population of 124 million will shrink to 96 million by 2050. So they can't be a great power. Australia is a small country.
Yes.
So if you look at, and South Korea too has got a population problem, an aging problem.
An aging problem.
And there's North Korea up there, which is the Bhutan, who is trying to, go after them always. So I think the entire world is in a very unstable situation.
It is, yes.
And everybody is trying to create alliances to counter that. But the big thing will be very clear, is the West versus China in the future.
The West versus China.
Yeah.
Right. So the Ukraine war, has it really benefited China a lot, or has it also put China under pressure? So on the one hand, we see that the Chinese are being rebuked for not censoring the Russians and supplying them with various things. So is it something that...
I think it strengthened China because geopolitically it has got Russia as a client state.
A client state now.
And most of the resources and oil and minerals which are there for Russia is in the Asian part of Siberia.
Yes, right.
And China getting all those minerals and oil from Sakhalin and other places which is in Asia will mean their oil security will go up.
Yes.
Their economic security will go up. And China is $20 trillion in GDP.
Yes.
It could become bigger than the United States in 10 years. Though it may not be richer in per capita terms.
Right.
And China is spending $250 billion on defense. Some say they're spending $700 billion.
I see.
Whereas the US spends $850 billion.
Okay.
And the Chinese are building up very sophisticated weapons. They're not there in nuclear area. Russia is there. So look at the partnership.
That's a great
But the key thing is Putin wants to be independent. He doesn't want to be the younger brother of somebody else.
Yes.
That is a big challenge.
Right.
And that is where the West should talk to Putin and come to an agreement, because the West needs Putin more than Putin needs the West to counter China in the future. If Putin were to be on the side of the West, it will be akin to what Kissinger and Nixon tried to get China away from Russia.
Right.
The whole intention of that breakthrough was to get China away from Russia.
Yes, right.
And that was to break up the Soviet Union, right? So now they have to play the game. But it requires leaders of great maturity and understanding and history to do that. And today, I don't think they're there in the West.
What do you think of the recent visit of Prime Minister Modi to the US? Do you see it as a success? Do you see any good deliverables?
I think Prime Minister Modi's visit to the US was a great success. Because geopolitically, India is in an advantageous situation. And India under Prime Minister Modi has taken the lead in global affairs. COP21, India committed to becoming a carbon-free or carbon-neutral country by 2070. I think.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
2070. Till then, every COP, India used to play truant. India used to put up its hackles, not sign agreement, nitpick. But here he took the leadership. He jointly with France started the World Solar Alliance, which is tremendous.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And he has pursued his independent foreign policy for very long.
Yes.
We got a good foreign policy with Putin. We got it with America. We bought American arms, which is very good. So we're getting the latest technologies. We are not over-dependent on Russia. And we explained our position to them. We are taking a strong position against anybody who is against our interest. And we are showing that we'll protect our people anywhere. We are a defensive power and not an offensive power. And he has taken steps to grow the economy very well and make the economy stronger, because Prime Minister Modi understands what matters to a country is economic power. Soft power is okay, but the real power has to be economic power, hard power, the military, and that's the way the world is. So his visit was an indication of how the US has changed its attitude to India. And he was welcomed and he played his part. He met all the entrepreneurs, everybody else. And the fact that so many Indians are risen to senior positions in American companies showed there's something special about India in the United States. So I think that is a very good visit. And he has cultivated America for the last 9 years. And all the benefits are now beginning to show. See, we should not make America an enemy just because of ideology.
Yes.
The UPA and the left made America an enemy, unnecessarily abusing America. It's like the old communist Nara, slogan. Yankee, go home, but take me with you. Most of the CPIM and the leftist children are studying in American universities.
How nice.
Many of their relatives are running NGOs funded by American groups.
Right.
That's why they're opposed to the FCNRA being applied correctly. So you see this, this cowardice and this hypocrisy happening there. And India unnecessarily was antagonistic to the US. So I think India has become very pragmatic, is looking after its interest. One of the big benefits of Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy has been how the Middle East treats us. The whole attitude of the Middle East has changed towards India.
Yes, right.
The Middle East has become friendly. They've given national awards to Prime Minister Modi. We have agreements on investments. We have agreements on everywhere else. We are favored there. They see as a long-term friend.
Yes.
And the Middle East has fundamentally changed. Now, under Prince Salman, the American closely cultivated policy of domination of Saudi Arabia is gone.
It's gone now.
Prince Salman and his generation are telling the Americans, we are equals, treat us as equals, and you are not dominant, don't push us around, don't patronize us.
Yes.
And Prince Salman recently has created a line to President Xi, to China.
Yes, right.
And they invited China to be the interlocutor to deal with Iran.
Iran, yes.
The Iranians have gone to China, and Prince Salman has allowed them to come to Riyadh. And we are also seeing Syria being readmitted in the Arab League.
Yes, we have seen that.
And all that means Prince Salman is asserting himself and his power in the Middle East. And I think that's remarkable. Because till then, it is the client state of the United States, and they could get what they want.
Yes.
They could get all the money, sell to them whatever they want, etc. Now he's standing up and asserting independence. Now that's a very, very big thing. And India is in the right part of history. And Pakistan has ceased to exist in India's foreign policy.
Totally. Yes.
Totally.
Yes.
I mean, we don't talk about Pakistan, even though a group of people in Delhi try to say, oh, we are neighbors. But this is a terrorist nation. You can't have people who send terrorists to kill your own people and say, oh, we need peace. And you can't say, we must go, we are the big brother. They hate you. They write the history to hate you.
Yes.
The children are taught to hate India.
Yes.
They have contempt for Hindus. And they have contempt for India. They have an exaggerated sense of importance of their own.
Yes.
And they're a broken country.
Totally, yes.
And these people want to say this, it's better we keep them at a distance and tell them don't cross the border or they're going to get hit like he did when he went to Balakot.
Yes.
And I think the entire policy has been very good. And we have got the Middle East on our side. We got Egypt on our side.
Yes.
Egypt policy has been very good. Egypt is a major Arab power.
Yes.
They're missing out in growth today. And North Africa, which is Islamic, is turning around. Pakistan still has in Islamic, all the Islamic countries, they got an organization, IOC, I think.
IOC.
Yeah.
OIC. Yes.
Organization of Islamic Countries.
Yes.
And there they still have a voice because of religion, but that voice is diminishing.
Right.
Because real politics will dominate anything else in the new world.
Right. So do you see the US as a nation in decline? Because they are now kind of withdrawing from the Middle East, and we are seeing Mohammed bin Salman asserting himself.
See, Abhijit, if you read Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilization, there are many truths there. He makes the point that great powers and great countries get into economic overreach, and that economic overreach ultimately hurts them. America has got $26 trillion of debt.
Yes.
Interest rates have gone up. And America has been the world's policeman for long.
Yes.
It has tried to protect Europe at its own cost. And it has the grand notion that it can control the entire world.
Yes.
By Pax Americana, same like Pax Britannia.
Yes.
In the earlier century.
Yes.
And Great Britain lost everything because of economic overreach. They could not run their empires, they fought wars, etc. But America is a $25 trillion economy. It's a very big economy. Now, what is the challenge about America? The Americans build a narrative